Many players and reporters have spoken out on the minutes that Tom Thibodeau gives his star players, and we're going to break this down because obviously there's some misconception here. So we're going to jump right in, guys. Welcome back to Knicks Digest. It's Chris here, and let's waste no time to talk about this because as we know, Tom Thibodeau has a certain reputation to him where people believe that he plays his stars too many minutes. Now, going into when the Knicks first hired Thibodeau, I actually said the same thing. I said that Tibbs overplays his guys. He burns people out. Look at Luol Deng, who played back-to-back seasons with 40-plus minutes per game. And then, obviously, the number one guy who we talk about this with, Derrick Rose, being in the game with a minute left and tearing his ACL against the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round of the 2012 NBA playoffs. But that might not be true 10, 12 years later. Now, if we look at what's going on now, we can see that things have changed, but not everyone is realizing that. As recently, Candace Parker said this: the amount of minutes that the main guys have had to log, Hart, Brunson, DiVincenzo, I just wonder if they're going to get to the finish line healthy. Now, before we talk about this, let's understand that they have played big minutes, but that's because there's been a ton of injuries. Now, Parker is right to bring this up because there have been a ton of injuries to the New York Knicks, but also there's an insinuation here that Tom Thibodeau plays too many minutes and plays his guys too much. That's not the case. Now, here's the deal with Candace Parker. She's very similar to NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal in the sense that she is a legend of the WNBA. She's one of the greatest women basketball players in history. She also doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Candace Parker, as we all know, said that Brunson had a bad series against the Miami Heat. Brunson averaged 24 points against the Cavs and 30 points against the Heat. And she said he played well against the Cavs and the Heat, not so much. Why? Candace Parker doesn't know basketball because she doesn't pay attention. She just gets paid way too much money to talk about basketball because she's good in the WNBA. That's the entire reason why. And also, they like to push women and make women more involved in media because, you know, for so long there's been some lack of women working in sports. So they like to do that, obviously, and that I respect and I understand. But where the hell is Monica McNutt, someone who knows ball and watches all the games? Not someone like Candace Parker who just says BS that she doesn't know what she's talking about. Now, if you look here, in NBA minutes per game, because Knicks Muse responded to Candace Parker, the leaders in minutes per game are DeRozan, Luka Doncic, Mikal Bridges, Tyrese Maxey, Kevin Durant, Fred VanVleet, Derek White, Trae Young, Jason Tatum, Domantas Sabonis, Devin Booker, and De'Aaron Fox. No Knicks in the top 12 minutes played per game. Can we stop making things up? Knicks Muse is absolutely right. And if you look at the rest of the top 20, there are two Knicks in it, neither of whom are in the top 15. Now in average minutes per game, as you could see, Julius is at 15th with only 35.4 and Jalen Brunson at 35.1, the same amount as Anthony Edwards, who's never accused of playing too many minutes. Also, the same as LeBron James, who's in year 21. So it's not like he's playing too many minutes, Jalen Brunson, that is. So Candace Parker, respectfully, stop talking until you pay some attention to the sport for once. But no, we're not going to get that. We're going to get the fact that NBA on TNT is more than anything TV and comedy. And look, it's entertaining as hell. Don't get me wrong. I love watching it. But I mainly like watching it when it's EJ, Chuck, Shaq, and Kenny, because mainly it's just four friends riffing about basketball. And look, do they know what they're talking about? Sure. Are they paying the closest attention? No. Charles Barkley, yes, he does. Kenny Smith, not exactly, but he also knows ball very well. He analyzes things great. He's good with watching games. Obviously, he's had bad takes in the past. Everyone has. Shaq, we know how Shaq is. He's there for comedic relief, and we all know he doesn't really watch basketball at all because he doesn't know what's going on and then says, well, I won 4 rings, so I know what the hell I'm talking about. No, you did. When you played in the NBA and were a top 10 player of all time, now you don't watch the sport. And when people don't watch the sport, they accuse people of doing stuff that they did in the past, like Thibodeau overplaying guys. That is not what happens anymore. The one caveat that you can argue against this is the fact that Tibbs leaves his guys in at the end of the game, a la Derrick Rose back in the day, and Josh Hart spoke out on this. And when asked about Tibbs leaving his starters out there at the ends of blowouts, even though he did not do that against the 76ers, Josh Hart said Tibbs has some trauma he has to deal with. Now, this is actually a relation to something that Tibbs has talked about when he was an assistant coach for the Celtics, and Kobe basically just not sitting at the ends of games and continuing to beat up on teams, which is really what this leads into. That's kind of where it comes from, according to Josh Hart. But Josh is obviously just making a joke there. Also, separately, shout out Josh Hart for, just being amazing. But if you look at this, it's infuriating when people like Candace Parker and other people who don't know the first thing about what's going on in the NBA today talk about sports. Because look, if I played Candace Parker in a 1-on-1 to 100, she would win 100-0 probably within 7-8 minutes. She'd just score on me every single time. If I got the ball, she'd steal it right from me the second I try to dribble. I'm not saying I'm better than these people at basketball. I'm not. I'm saying I watch the sport. And they clearly don't, because there's no way someone who has that high of a basketball IQ that you can be one of the greatest in your field ever can have this many bad, stupid, uninformed ideas. And that is what Candace Parker has. And something that the masses also don't understand is how good OG Anunoby is. Yes, we are moving into some OG Anunoby content because Tommy Beer said recently on his Twitter that OG Anunoby has played a total of 528 minutes over his first 15 games with New York. Incredibly, the Knicks have outscored their opponents by 282 points in those 528 minutes, and plus 282 is the highest plus-minus by any player in NBA history over his first 15 games with a new team. So obviously we've seen that this has been a complete breakout for OG Anunoby on the Knicks. And that's not all. He's just the most efficient player the New York Knicks have ever seen through 15 games. As the highest plus-minus with a new team for any first 15 games is OG Anunoby with plus 282. Right after him, there's a drop-off by a lot. And then you get three guys who are all close. Pau Gasol, his first year with the Lakers. Chris Paul when he got to the Houston Rockets. Now, mind you, the 2008 Lakers, they went to the NBA Finals before ultimately losing to the Boston Celtics. The 2017-18 Rockets almost beat the Golden State Warriors when they were in their super team Warriors era because Kevin Durant is just not about that. Rasheed Wallace, who went to the 2003-2004 Detroit Pistons, who, won the finals that year. And then Steve Nash, who obviously would go on to win MVP and lead the Suns to a second seed in 2005, where they would beat the Los Angeles Lakers and Kobe Bryant in the first round. Now, obviously, they didn't go to the finals, but still, you saw this with an MVP. And on top of this, the one that I like to connect this the most to is Rasheed Wallace. Because, yeah, Sheed maybe wasn't an all-star player like Pau or Chris Paul or Steve Nash when we're talking about legends who are really top 50, top 75 players of all time. OG reminds me of Rasheed when we're talking about this, because you look at OG Anunoby, you look at Rasheed Wallace, there's a similarity in vibe of coming in and doing that dirty work, and the Knicks have drawn a lot of comparisons to that 04 Pistons team. The Knicks do feel like the reincarnated 04 Pistons exactly 20 years later. And I'm not saying the Knicks are going to go out and win the finals this year, but what I am saying is this is a tremendous sign for the New York Knicks and OG Anunoby. So New York, pay this man and keep him around because he will be a key to the New York Knicks winning the finals in the next 3 years. I promise. I think the Knicks are just that good. As we've said on Knicks Reddit, bring out the metal bats. OG's back. Time to start beating teams with metal bats once again. And just one more stat that is just going to make you guys feel real good. Highest plus-minus net rating, or highest net plus-minus among all two-man lineups in 2024. Number 1 is OG Anunoby and Jalen Brunson, while 2 is Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen. 3 is Paul George and James Harden, and 4 is Giannis and Brook Lopez. Now, there is one guy on this list of 8 names who has never been named to an NBA All-Star team, and you guys know who it is. OG Anunoby. Why? Because maybe the stats don't jump out. Maybe the 15 points per game doesn't wow you. OG is just an efficiency monster. And the New York Knicks did an excellent thing by making that trade, as good as Barrett and IQ are. That was the right move by the Knicks. The Knicks are cooking right now. This is perfect. They're not playing their guys too many minutes, unlike what casuals think. Parker. Again, I'm not saying that everyone who talks about basketball on these major channels don't know what they're talking about. There's a ton of people who do, but you get the people who are just generalizing because they're not watching all the games. They're just watching the nationally televised ones. So people like Shaq, people like Candace Parker, people like Stephen A. Smith, they don't see all the games. So they don't know what's going on. There are other people who do know what they're talking about. I know what I'm talking about with the New York Knicks. You guys know what you're talking about with the New York Knicks. Comment your thoughts down below. Let's shop it in the comments. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great day. Go Knicks.